Have you ever dreamed of building the career in life you truly want, but felt unsure where to start? The Career Capital Collective podcast with Sarah Robson and Kaylee Gaspari is your blueprint for success, offering actionable advice on navigating career pivot. Join us in redefining success on your own terms. Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Career Capital Collective. I am one of your hosts, Sarah Robson.
And Kaylee Gaspari.
Kaylee, I'm so excited to interview you today. We're changing the roles. So today, Kaylee will be sharing her story, and which is one that is extremely impressive. And Kaylee, I'll really just hand this up to you to kind of kick things off, and then I'll just ask you a series of questions.
Sure. Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. So this is weird for me, obviously. I've never really shared some of this story. I'm a very private person. It's hard typically to ask for help. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened during a low period of my life, which was about 2 years ago, and how that failure actually ended up being the best thing for my career and myself as a person. So, on paper, my life looked really perfect about 2 years ago in 2023. I had just finished my MBA. I was working at Amazon. I got like a coveted job. I was living in Europe. I had a German boyfriend. I was doing all the things that a typical good girl does. And on paper, it looked great, but I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt quite empty and I was a little sad. So I took a huge risk and ended up moving to the Bay Area at a company. It didn't work out. I lost my relationship, my equity eventually, also my job, very similar to your starting over story, Sarah. But in that was opportunity. So I ended up kind of coming out of it, needing to go through that, meeting my husband. I was able to protect myself with severance. I learned how to negotiate a contract. I had my green card sponsored by my company, and actually ended up finding out that chaos was not the way that I wanted to live my life anymore, choosing a more stable, higher paying executive role. So coming out of that is kind of what we're going to go through in detail, like the burn down and then the come back up.
I mean, that's a lot. There's a lot there.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. Starting with when you were in Germany, how did you get out of that when you felt really low? And do you think it's something sounded like it was going to be better on paper, and then when you were in it, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was in Germany, I had just gone through the MBA, and I did my MBA at ESADE. I was living in Barcelona, having a lot of fun. The MBA for me personally, having worked for 7 years previously in consulting, I didn't feel like it was a significant push from an educational perspective. I learned more around the benefits of having a network and stuff. So I was a little bit confused as to what I wanted to get out of the MBA, and figured what I needed to do was, well, if I'm in the MBA, I should get a really good job. And the really good jobs were either in consulting or in big tech job.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for tech because I'd already done consulting. And I was like, well, I should live in Europe. That's what you do if you go to the MBA in Europe. So I made up this story in my mind that this is what I need to do because I invested so much money in it. It was over $100,000. And so I wanted to make sure that I got the bang for my buck. That's kind of why I ended up there. But it wasn't really from a place of oh, I'm really interested in this. I'm super passionate. I just kind of felt like I should do it, if that makes sense.
The shoulds. Was it societal pressure, and I guess who was telling you these shoulds? Was it just yourself, or did you have family telling you too?
So my background is, for those of you who don't know, I'm half Japanese and I'm half Italian, and I spent a ton of time being raised by my Japanese grandparents. There are narratives that play in my head around how much money I need to make, that I need to be able to take care of myself. I think the shoulds come from those voices, and then also I've internalized that into a story, right? So, I thought to myself, well, I need to chase titles. I have to be an executive by a certain time frame. These are all things that were shoulds that I kind of created, but a lot of it also had to do just with family. I wanted to not let them down. And I think I'm in a place now where those shoulds are starting to disappear. But at that point of my life, we were very much still in eldest daughter does all the right things,
right,
at the expense of maybe even sometimes my own happiness.
It's really impressive because in your story thus far, you started over more than 3 times. You started over in Barcelona, you started over in Germany, you started over in the Bay Area, and now you've started over again in Nashville. And that's in probably less than like what, 5 years?
Yeah. And I was chasing chaos. I totally take ownership for that. If things weren't working out or I wasn't happy or I didn't like my relationship, I'd be like, oh, gotta go like blow this up and go on to the next thing. And that was very much on me. I needed to prove myself and I just wasn't able to like really enjoy stability. And so what I learned when kind of everything had fallen apart when I was living in California was that stability does not equal boring. And that was the biggest personal lessons for me, just like on a macro level.
That's a lesson that I definitely am working on as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, like about you, what you're going through, and like it is necessary. I had to learn that because I wouldn't have learned how to regulate my nervous system and a lot of lessons that I learned that like forced me into therapy because I was pretty desperate when I was in my low point. And therefore, I wouldn't have been able to give myself the gift of a more stable lifestyle that's defined on my own terms.
Right. So you're in Germany, then of course you moved to the Bay Area, you're working at your old company, and then it sounds like the rug's like pulled from you. How did you get through that like dark period where you're going through like transition and obviously the work visa situation and the stress of
Yeah.
losing your job? Like, how did you get through that time period?
I'm going to bring us back a little bit so I can set the context of how
Mhm.
truly chaotic this was. So, when I was living in Germany and I wasn't happy, I was very lucky when I was in my MBA because I had two options for jobs. So, I had done an internship at Amazon, which is where I ended up taking the job. And then I did another internship at this tech company in the Bay Area. So, I got reached out to while I was in Germany saying, like, hey, if you're not liking your job, we need someone to run partnerships. And so I ended up getting a call, was like, oh, I'll go test it out for a few months, and then moved to the Bay Area. A friend of mine who ended up being a romantic partner later on is kind of like the connection of how that had happened. So when I was there, that was like my whole life. And what ended up happening is I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend in Germany. We went our separate ways. I decided I wanted to stay here and go all in on this fairly risky opportunity that I didn't really know very much about. I was so desperate to get out of Germany, quite frankly, and out of Amazon that I didn't do a lot of my due diligence. And that was a huge learning for me. Like, ask questions, ask how the company's funded, ask to look at the financials, the balance sheet.
Mhm.
So I just went in and was like, oh, I'm going to figure this out and kind of like make it work. And
Right.
so that's how I kind of ended up in a situation where I had my job, my visa, I was on a TN at the time, and my relationship all tied up in this like one situation. It was very nuclear.
And when it rains, it pours.
When it rains, of course, exactly. So, like, very similar to you, the company started struggling, quite frankly. And I didn't know this at the time, but it ended up being like super unprofitable. Like, there was nothing that we could have done to save it. So I came in being like, oh, we're going to turn this thing around. We have this team and we were all very excited. There was like these big equity and these big bonus packages. And that ended up not being true. Like, we just didn't have the information. So that was like horrifying to be like, oh, I'm part of a growth company. Oh, actually, sorry, this company has a ton of debt. And now we're trying to stay afloat and try to find investors who are willing to save us.
Was it hard to get access to that information like when you first joined, or was it something that just like slowly unraveled itself? Once you were in your role, were you able to look at the financials and then you're like, oh wow, this is not good?
That's a great question. I didn't even ask, honestly, to start with. So whether or not I was in a position to know about it, I didn't even think to ask because I'm so like optimistic. I was quite naive, honestly. Like, when I became a VP there, obviously I had access to the financials, but I think it's fair to be like, hey, how much debt does the company have? Like, tell me a little bit about how this equity is structured. Like, are there preferred shareholders? Like, what happens in these scenarios, especially when you're working in startup?
You sharing about the financials, I mean, that is definitely something I've also mistakenly not done, just being so excited about the job and the role, not asking about like a fund's returns before joining. And then when you're there, you're like, oh, wow, this is a sinking ship.
Exactly. And like, being an optimistic person, I think is great, but it was extremely humbling because it doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah.
Your ego around your ability to fix something or your excitement with like what you think the company is going to do. There are some hard and fast like realities around like debt and like debt structure. And that's essentially what happened. It became a bit of fire sale situation where we needed to get acquired.
Mhm.
And during that period, The romantic relationship fell apart. I lost the friendship element of that as well. I was by myself in the Bay Area. And then I ended up getting promoted to vice president. And it was like a very like weird, shameful time of my life because I felt like I didn't deserve to be promoted because it was a role that like my friend had had before.
Oof, that is tricky. How did you navigate that?
It was just a tough time for everyone that was going through it. And I just had to keep showing up. So during that time where I was really personally struggling, I started like listening to a bunch of podcasts. Like I found Sabrina Zohair, who talks a lot about anxiety and relationships. I was so focused on just myself that I don't think I was understanding what other people were going through. So at some point, it became more about just the compassion of what we were all dealing with. I just wanted to show up and keep going with what I had committed to. And also because in a leadership position, you don't always have the luxury of just completely losing it. Like I had to keep it together during that time for my team. So I felt this responsibility to show up and not be just a complete mess, even though sometimes I truly felt like I was.
Right. For that role as the VP, like what changed? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you had additional responsibility. And then can you also share kind of what happened with that equity piece? Because obviously, at these startups, getting equity as part of your package is very common, but it's so hard to put like a price point on that. And can you kind of share your experience with getting equity and what happened with it?
I had equity when I had come in as a director, but I didn't understand the structure of the preferred shares versus non-preferred. So they were just like regular shares. And I can't remember what the strike price was, but I think it ended up being like $150,000 or something like when I first started. When I then got promoted to vice president, that like doubled. So there was like a bonus portion, which was like significant, a very big base. I was overseeing all of the operations, all the supply chain, customer service. There was about 200 indirect reports. Like I had a very significant role in that organization. The equity was like, I think it was meant to be worth like $1 million or something like that. But, you know, when the deal transpired, which was the company ended up being in a bad debt situation, they had to get acquired. That equity essentially evaporated because the debt that had to be paid back, like it all got wiped out as part of the deal. So it was like a fire sale where the other company that bought us, they were like, well, we'll get you out of debt, but like the equity that's not preferred shares, that all goes away.
So your equity just evaporates like that.
And some people were quite smart. They had negotiated that into their contract. That's the smart way to do it. So it was a great learning opportunity because I was like, oh, wow. Like I just was just like, yay, equity. Thank you. And
right.
Looking back, it was quite humbling to say, you know what, I didn't really do my research thinking like, oh, we're going to solve this thing. And then I'm going to be part of this massive exit.
Right. Despite that being such a probably low period of your life, can you talk about like how you got through that and kind of where your journey has gone now?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that helped me a lot was just like reaching out to friends and family. I had never done that before because I wanted to appear like I had it together and like I was able to handle it. But I did start reaching out to my friends and my family and just being like really open about what I was going through. Mm-hmm. And they were very helpful. Also, just the responsibility too of like having the team like relying on me still as their leader was allowed me to wake up every day knowing that I had a reason to wake up and go in. If I think about my life, I'm quite grateful and like I'm quite privileged. Not everyone who's going through a transition where your company's getting acquired is going to be okay after, is going to be able to find a job. So my mission was to make sure that everyone kept their jobs, even though at the end of it, I ended up like getting let go right at the very end, which was also a very, very big surprise. So I'll transition into that piece because that is kind of where I ended up getting to where I am today.
How did you end up getting the vice president role in the first place?
So when the old vice president had left, I was in the running because I had previously done an ERP implementation. So the CEO is who I was reporting to, and they were kind of testing me even before there was an opportunity for me to become an executive. So I had led this ERP implementation and had a conversation saying, hey, if you can prove yourself by doing this, which by the way, if you've ever done an ERP implementation, it's the worst. Like it's so awful. It was extremely hard.
Just describe what ERP is for those that are not familiar.
Yes, sorry, it's enterprise resource planning. And so what that means is you're essentially taking your system that does like the processing of like procure to pay. Sometimes it's also tied to like your warehouse management system. So like inventory, a lot of payment details flow through it. And it's part of like your tech stack. So it's like kind of like the backbone of the system of your enterprise, let's call it, how everything gets transacted and processed. So there's a lot of like connectivity between bill of materials, et cetera. So with that, we were trying to implement a very customized tech stack that had been designed internally with an out of the box solution. And so it was extremely difficult. Like that was the closest I've ever been in my life to quitting something. But I was like, I won't give up. My boss at the time, who was the CEO, was like, if you can do this and prove yourself, by the way, I have no technical experience and no business doing that. He's like, I know that you're resilient and that you can be an executive at the company. So I was kind of already positioned to take that role. So when it came between me and someone from the outside, it's easier for them too, because I know the company, like, I'm going to put you in this role.
Interesting. And so This is like your most senior role you've ever had.
Yeah, I had wanted to become a VP by 35. That was on my list of goals. And I did this in my early 34s. It was opportunistic, which is why I felt shame about it because, I was like, do I really deserve this? Like, it was a weird way that it had kind of happened. I felt like I was taking something from somebody else. So I didn't even post about it on LinkedIn. That's something that I look back on and I wouldn't recommend. My friend even said to me, if anyone I want to take the position, I want it to be you. So that gave me a lot of confidence in like my ability. But
how long were you in that role from like kind of you being promoted to then you finding out about what happened next when the company got acquired?
Not very long. So as soon as I got promoted, it was like, okay, now we have to turn around the unit economics, like the cost per order. So we had to hit the ground running. I was managing a team of all guys.
Wow.
I had 7 direct reports and I'm coming in and kind of being like, hey guys, sorry, I don't really know what I'm doing. But like you become extremely resilient when you're pushed into a position where you don't have a choice. I wanted this for myself. I wanted to also be a good leader and I knew that I needed their help, but I couldn't do it without them. So I really, at that point, decided to be more vulnerable as a leader and as a human. And I think that allowed us to actually perform and do what we needed to do to the best of our abilities. During that time, we then found out, oh my gosh, there's nothing we can really do. The company's going to get acquired.
So going back to you running this team of all men, like how is that dynamic? How was it?
I'm like used to being in rooms with mostly male colleagues just because I've grown up in that space. But when I came in to replace somebody that they had really trusted and appreciated, I was met definitely with some like, why are you here? What are you doing? Like, what are you asking of us? So that was probably the hardest part for me on like a personal level because I could see that there was doubt. I could see that there was trust that they didn't want to give to me. I felt like I had to prove myself.
Right.
And I remember talking to the CEO about it. He's like, be vulnerable and just say like, hey guys, like I need your help. Like I need you to be able to do this. And he's like, it's the greatest responsibility to be able to manage a team. And that changed my mindset just around, I have this opportunity. Don't make this about you feeling shameful or whatever. Like go do what's right for your team so like they can have the best possible experience.
I know you've told me about the kind of strategic instinct that saved you, I think, when the company was getting acquired. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Oh my gosh, this one's quite juicy. When we found out that the company was going to get acquired, I, of course, reached out to the acquiring company and was like, I want to meet you. And so I met one of the key operators who was going to come in to eventually buy the company. We kind of had a rapport. And therefore, I thought, we have a good relationship. I'm going to be safe. They had also told us everyone that is with the company is going to be safe. No one is going to get let go until after the acquisition. We need everyone to stay. That was part of the deal terms. So during this time, I'm like, ooh, I've got a bad feeling about this. I reached out to my uncle and he's like, hey, you're on contract. Like you're there as a TN worker.
Right.
Like they don't have to accept your contract. And it's just, why would they as a Canadian? So he gave me advice to restructure the terms of my contract to include severance and also to include them paying for my green card. So that advice from my uncle truly saved me. The company that acquired us, like, didn't actually really know the terms of like what existed beforehand.
You essentially renegotiate your contract. And this is with the acquiring company or with your current company?
So this was with my current company, and I have a lot of respect for my old boss. He was like, hey, I know this is really unfortunate. Like, let's get you at least, get your green card so you have the ability to work in the future, and also like make sure that you're taken care of, because there's not much I can do. He's like, when the new company takes over, like I don't have any power. So he kind of helped me get that. So it's like, yeah, I lost things, but I was protected in that loss. And the way that I got let go was because the terms of the deal were such that everyone had to stay. I wasn't really saying anything to anybody. Like it was all very hush hush. And the night before the acquisition, I was told I'm safe, 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 safe. My boss calls me and is like, I'm so sorry, like you're on the list. And I was like, what? And there was 2 people on the list. It was myself and another Canadian who was on contract. And so, people went to bat and were like, hey, you told us that we were going to be safe and we weren't. So I walked into the room and the guy who I had met before, because I tried to establish a rapport, is like, I think you're really impressive. You're a Ferrari. We can't afford a Ferrari right now. And I was like, did you just compare me to a car? This little wild way. Since my boss had called me, I knew it was coming. I was like, understand, business is business. All I want to know is if you're going to honor the terms of my contract and pay me my severance. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And then I stood up and said, my lawyers will be in touch. And walked out.
Wow. Amazing. Did they ask you to sign something, or did they have a document ready for you?
I think I did have to sign something. Yeah. And it was essentially like, hey, your contract doesn't exist anymore. Like we're not accepting it as part of the transition.
My gosh, that is so tough. I'm sure like the trust that you had, it's just like totally shattered and broken, like completely going against your word.
I was definitely caught off guard, because being told you're safe and being like, hey, I have to protect all these people, and then being not safe, it was tough. Like, I won't lie. I was definitely struggling there for a little bit.
Yeah. What happened after you talked with your lawyers? Were they able to ensure that the terms of your new contract were upheld by the new company?
Yes. So luckily, I have a friend whose husband is a lawyer. He had connected me with his friends that were in the space. So I had them read through my agreement. Like, I would have never made it through this time had I not have a group of people around me that were really supporting me in different aspects. So I had my uncle, I had my old boss, I had my friend's lawyer. Like everyone kind of rallied around helping me, which meant so much. Like they really showed up when I needed them. So they were like, yeah, they have to respect the terms of your contract. They reached out to their lawyers and took care of it. And they were never trying to screw me over or anything. They were just going through a very rapid acquisition. So I was made whole on everything. And if anyone is ever doing any contract work, like please make sure that you protect yourself and you work terms in before you even start that agreement.
That's a great call out. That's a really great call out. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of things to include in there that I'm sure most people aren't even aware that they can include. I think that by nature, the contract work, I feel like always seems more temporary. So it's like harder maybe to advocate for yourself. But to your point, like having those things in from the very beginning. Were you on a yearly contract, like year by year, or was it monthly? How did that work?
I was on an open-ended contract because I was a fractional executive. They were going to sponsor my green card regardless. Originally, I was going to get the H-1B and I didn't make the lottery. So then I was like, hey, I'm going to marry my husband, which is why we ended up getting eloped. I'm spilling all my secrets on this. We ended up getting eloped. And that's why my boss was like, hey, I'll help you. The company will help you with your green card fees.
Amazing.
Because you didn't make the H-1B. So that was already underway.
Amazing.
That allowed me, when the actual transition happened, you're technically not allowed to work in the States. So I was here stuck in the States for 6 months after it being let go, couldn't work. I was like, oh, like, what do I do? Luckily, I already had something lined up with this current company that I'm at.
And can you talk about kind of that period of time where you had the next thing lined up, and like, did you have it lined up right away? Did you take a couple of months to process?
Yeah. So I needed months to process. Like he had actually reached out to me before I knew that the acquisition was happening, but I had a sense. So my current boss and I were friends from before, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to make the move to Nashville. And after everything happened, I just needed some time. I was very confused around what had gone down and like who I wanted to be and what I wanted out of life. So I took the time because I couldn't technically work. And I just kind of like existed. I think you've talked about this in your other episode. I'm like, I'm just going to go to the gym. I'm going to spend time with Kyle. We took a trip to Seattle because I couldn't leave the States. So spend some time in nature. And I needed to reset my nervous system because I didn't know what it felt like to not just be scared and on edge all the time. Because every day we walked into work, I'm like, is the company going to go under today? Like, it really messed with my brain and my ability to just like process.
For sure. I mean, you're essentially living in fight or flight. And it's
Correct.
like when you just don't know what's going to happen next, it's just so incredibly nerve wracking. I feel like you getting let go, like despite not what you wanted in the moment, it's like once the decision's made, you can like just move on with your life as opposed to just being in this like limbo period.
I was just happy that a decision was made. I
Yeah.
didn't even care what decision it was
Yeah.
because you spend every day being like, am I going to get fired today? Am I going to get let go? So I felt a huge relief. I was like, now I can just go figure out what I actually want with my life, define success on my own terms,
Yeah.
and not feel this constant pressure around all this responsibility with the company and like everybody else's livelihood. Like, it was a relief.
I bet. I bet. And for those 5 months where you're kind of taking more time to yourself, were you having more opportunistic conversations? Did you know what you wanted to do next? Did you know you wanted another VP role?
I didn't really know for a while. Having some connections through my network and friends, I was exploring 3 opportunities at that time. One of them was a startup under Tools of Humanity from Sam Altman, but it was very early stages. I didn't even fully get through the interview process when I accepted the other job. There was also buying a company. That was also something I was exploring just like lightly. And then working as an executive head of supply chain and product at a manufacturing company, which is where I am today. So I'm head of product and supply chain. It's a family owned business under like a portfolio of many, many companies, great balance sheet, very stable.
Interesting. Is it a similar role than a role that you've done before, or is it totally different?
The structure is different. Like I'm head of supply chain and product. Product I had never done anything in. When I came in to interview, I was like, hey, I don't think this is like a full-time job. Like, you should give me something else. And they were like, okay, we'll give you product as well. So I didn't really know anything about it, but I've always worked in like operations and supply chain. So that
Hmm.
felt very like near and dear to my heart. Working in a global supply chain environment, we have company in India and all over.
Hmm.
That was different. So I learned a ton about ocean freight, tariffs this year. That was fun. The reason I did it and I decided to come here was because I really trust and admire my boss. He's a great mentor and somebody that I look up to. And I needed that stability. I need something where I know that, my salary is guaranteed. My bonus to some degree is also guaranteed. And I can have time for other things in my life, like the podcast and just other passions that are just outside of work. It was all consuming before.
I bet. And this, I just also shows like the power of like keeping your contacts warm. You never know when like someone you've worked with in the past is also going to you'll end up working with in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole idea of having a network of folks around you, it made me feel more safe. I didn't feel like I was drowning. Coming from consulting too, a lot of folks actually go on to work in industry. So you have folks that are very ambitious and doing quite well for themselves, working in all of these different businesses. So
Hmm.
I was very lucky in the fact that I had multiple opportunities I was able to choose from, but I still took the time and I just felt like I needed to give myself that before I was able to like show up and be a leader again.
Totally. And how has been the adjustment from like say San Francisco to Nashville?
It's been interesting. Like, coming to the South, I would have never done it had I not thought it was the right thing to do in a leadership position, quite frankly. Like, you can probably live other places, but if I'm going to be there for my team, like, I'd rather be there in person. And like, it shows that you're willing to take the risk, move your family, do whatever to like
Yeah.
commit to the company. Yeah, all in. Exactly. I'm an all or nothing person. I do feel like it's been an adjustment. I miss California for sure. My husband is from Santa Cruz. He misses it there. It took me a full year to finally feel like I have friends. I'm starting to get my community. Like, I started reaching out to women that are starting really interesting things in the network. Giving something a chance once you go to do it is also some like advice that I would give. Like, give it a full shot.
For sure. I mean, I really admire your ability to just go for it and just like fearlessly like restart your life in like all these different countries and cities. Like that's so admirable. And I know for many people, that's like, they would feel like that is absolutely impossible. So I just want to call that out. So it's like just so impressive. Second, Nashville, for those who haven't been to Nashville, it is like up and coming. Like there is just new development everywhere. I feel like it's the new Austin.
Right. Yeah. No, well, thank you. And it was a strategic choice. I want to buy a house and I want to be able to have lower taxes. So financially, I can do more things. I didn't take the AI job, which I really flip flop back and forth on that. I'm like, why would I not do that? Like, people ask me, like, why would you not do that? That's insane. And I was like, I'm kind of moving in this other direction. If my end goal is eventually to like own multiple companies in the manufacturing space, this makes sense. Like, it actually makes sense for me, even though it may not make sense for anybody else.
Totally. And that's what matters, right? It's like, what do you want to do? Also want to shout out Kyle, because him being down to move just shows his dedication as a partner. And you're just like in this together, like starting over totally together, which I'm sure is just making you guys even closer because you've moved to this new city. You both have to rebuild. But I just like really admire that he's just so on.
Yeah, Kyle has been a godsend. If you know this man, you know he's like the most down to earth, like calmest person. Like, as a former queen of chaos, which I'm still working on, he's like my like truly a rock and just kind of keeps me grounded and keeps me sane. So he was with me through all the emotional breakdowns, like all of the really hard stuff. And for me, it's like building this life that's us defining our terms of success together has also been just like really beautiful. And I just feel so lucky.
I love it. So what is next for you?
Next, I'm really enjoying where I'm at right now. For me, success has been spending more time with friends and family. I got married last year officially in my grandparents' condo. I'm very close to Toronto. I'm able to reconnect with all my friends from elementary school and like high school. And I'm just choosing like to be more harmonious in pillars of my life.
If you could give the listeners like one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say do things with your eyes open and make sure that you are fully understanding and protected if you're going to go into a situation that feels like it's high risk. If it's like an Amazon or something where you know like the stakes of the game are all taken care of, it's different. But if you're going to go into a high risk situation, just make sure there's something for you to fall back on depending on your level of comfort. Because had I not had the contract with the severance as well as the green card, I would have been in a much worse position. So getting ahead of that, I think, is really important, especially if you want to do something on your own, which gives you more freedom.
For sure. You provided your downside, like financial protection to ensure that you are always going to be safe no matter what.
Exactly. And then you're not so stressed when the eventual thing happens. So understanding how to structure things in a way that protect you from the downside or the risk, so you feel more comfortable taking those big leaps.
Yeah.
Which may, like, if it had worked out the other way, I could be like a multimillionaire. You know what I mean?
But now I feel like you're much more in control of your own destiny, and it's onwards and upwards.
Yes.
This was such a great episode, and I'm so happy our listeners got to hear more about you. Thank you everyone for joining. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. If you can share this episode with a couple of friends, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Capital Collective podcast with Sarah Robson and Kaylee Gaspari. We hope you feel inspired and empowered to take charge of your career and build the life you truly want. Follow us on Instagram at Career Capital Collective.